Guys, it is time for my favorite section of the show. Welcome to Fun with Fountain Pens.
Here's a house. Here's a door. Windows 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready to knock? Turn the lock.
10 school. Oh, I just love that intro. Okay, I only recently got this pen back. This is a Ranga 4C, which is handmade in India. My old friend, Dr. Evo, who you often see in the chat, borrowed this pen off me about 6 months ago. I think about 6 months ago, and absolutely loved it. So, and he told me I was actually really lucky to get it back. So let me just go through it. Now, the thing about ebonite pens, that it used to be, ebonite was a really common material in fountain pens up until the ready availability of plastics in about the 1930s. Like most pens would be made from ebonite, which is another name for galvanized rubber. Now, why people quite like it is because it has a warmth to it. Like if you're holding a pen for a long time, an ebonite pen noticeably warms in your hand, and people quite like it. Because they find it quite comforting. The other thing is that the feed on a nib, the feed, which is the sort of the grilled thing that is underneath the nib, that regulates the ink flow. It comes in two types of materials. It's either a plastic or, in more expensive pens, it's an ebonite. And the advantage of ebonite is you can heat it up, like you could put it into a cup of boiling water, for example, and it makes it slightly malleable. And people like this because it means you can adjust the feed to adjust the ink flow very easily. It's not something you can do with a plastic nib. So on very expensive pens or good quality pens, it is very common to see an ebonite feed, and this one has one. The other thing about this pen you should know is that it is handmade. Like some dude in India literally makes this by hand. They're not manufactured. And what you get with a bunch of pens these days is they're injection molded using acrylics and things like that, or they're milled on metalworking machines. This guy handcrafts these pens, and they are awesome. It has one deficiency, and Dr. Evo, who I lent this to, agreed with me about it, and that is the ridiculous number of turns that it takes to take the cap off this wonderful pen. Now, on my Visconti Homo sapiens, the cap comes off with their special patented mechanism in a quarter of a turn. On my Mont Blanc 149, it's about 1.75 turns. On this pen, it's about 7 turns. Okay, so that was 6 turns to get the cap off, and you can kind of see how many threads are on this thing. Because of that, it makes this pen a little bit annoying for doing things like note-taking. You know, you're sitting in a meeting and you want to take a note, you just want to write one sentence or two every couple of minutes as an aide-memoire. A pen like this with a cap that takes that many turns is not really appropriate. The other thing about it is, as with many Asian pens, and including India, is that it has my least favorite filling system, which is a cartridge converter. Okay, there's nothing wrong with a cartridge converter, but I don't like it as much as a piston filler. The other advantage of a piston filler is they tend to come with ink windows, so you can see how much ink is remaining in your pen without needing to undo the barrel. This one doesn't have one. Other than those two deficiencies, I absolutely adore this pen. One of the reasons is it has the steel nib, and I think it's a Schmidt. So either a Schmidt or a Knox nib, which is a steel nib manufacturer in Germany. Now, I had this nib specialty ground from a broad into a cursive italic, and as I've said to you guys before, the thing about a cursive italic is it's like a broad, except it is sharper. Okay, it is so sharp that it can, if you're not careful, rip the page. There is an even sharper version called a formal italic, which definitely does rip the page. Now, the advantage of this is it's like a stub, which means it has broad downstrokes and thin cross strokes, like that, but it is an awful lot sharper than a stub. Now, I had this specially ground. It is I have two broad cursive italics. The other is on my Namiki Emperor, which is the most expensive pen that I own, and I absolutely love the nib on that, even though it's much, much bigger. But this one is one of my favorite nibs to write with. It is absolutely delightful. And what was really interesting is Dr. Evo loved it too. And the thing about him is that he is left-handed. Now, left-handed people, particularly people like him who overwrite like this rather than underwrite like that, not every nib is one that they use. There's a very limited number of nibs for overwrited left-handed people, and this is one that he absolutely loved. I got this nib. I bought the pen, I think, from either Peyton Street Pens in the United States or Birmingham Pens, and their in-house nibmeister is the guy who ground this nib into a broad cursive italic, and I absolutely love it. Right, on to the ink. There's something that's really strange that happens in the fountain pen community, is that you have a thing called ink libraries. And what that is communities of people who post inks to one another, right? So they have these like these sort of like collections. It's like you see in a laboratory of test tubes, a thing full of test tubes, only they contain ink. And what people do is they grab one of these ink, they post it to someone, the person who receives it tries a couple of the inks, sees what they like, and then they fill up what they've used with one of their inks, and then they post it onto the next person, and so on and so forth, and it goes round and round and round, and it's a way for fountain pen enthusiasts to try a huge selection of inks. It's this really sort of weird subculture inside fountain pens. Now, I've never been a part of something like that, but I do buy inks from around the world, and one day, out of nowhere, a whole bunch of inks that are completely unknown and that I know nothing about arrived in the post. I think I got, it might have been 7 or 8, maybe even 10 bottles of ink came to me from somewhere, and made in the United Kingdom, and said, oh look, please review these inks and let us know what you think. But the problem was there was no return address. I have no idea which ink manufacturer in the world was developing new colors of inks, wanted people around the world to try them to see what they were like, looked for feedback, and didn't give me a way to do that. So I know nothing about this ink other than it is a Prussian Blue. I don't know who makes it. I don't know if it eventually became a commercial product or something like that. It is just a bottle of ink that someone sent me that I use, and it is really, really great for people who like that kind of blue, almost blue-black. See if I can give you a bit of a color test here. It is wonderful. It's kind of a sort of like, it's not quite a, it's called Prussian Blue, and it's not quite a blue-black. It's more like an ocean color. The ink that it reminds me of very much is the Irishizuku Shinkai, which is supposed to be the color of the deep blue sea. And I'll give you a comparison swipe of that so you can have a look at it. And now that I'm looking on the page, I can see that they're very, very different. But the Prussian Blue is a lot sort of more grey, but it does shade very similarly. It's shading very much, but sort of, from dark to light like that, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, hang on, let me just change it. Grab a napkin. Yeah, all right. Well, that's actually, now that I'm seeing it on the page, it's not like that. They're very, very dissimilar colours, but they did remind me of one another, and that's certainly the closest that I have. All right, so that's the story for this week. This is the Ranga 4C. It is suitable for someone who likes to write in a journal. If you're going to be writing page after page, because you've got to uncap it 7 times, it is a pen that you might consider. It is made out of a wonderful old school material, ebonite, and it is a wonderful writer, I think. These are sold by either Birmingham Pens or Peyton Street Pens in the United States. And I'm showing you the Prussian Blue ink that I got from God knows where. This has been fun with fountain pens. Guys, I'm going to play some more music. I very much hope you enjoyed watching that as much as I did presenting it.